Chapter 4. The Law of Reproduction. Population of the Globe. Question 686. Is the reproduction of living beings a law of nature? And the answer, evidently it is. Without reproduction, the corporeal world would perish. Question 687. If the population of the globe goes on increasing, as it has hitherto done, will it in course of time become too numerous? And the answer, no. The divine overruling always provides for and maintains equilibrium. God permits nothing useless. Man sees but a corner of the panorama of the universe, and is therefore unable to perceive the harmony of its various departments. Succession and improvement of races. Question 688. There are at this moment upon the earth races of men who are evidently and rapidly diminishing. Will they eventually disappear from it? And the answer, yes, but it is because others will have taken their place, as your place will someday be taken by others. Question 689. Are the men now upon the earth a new creation, or the improved descendants of the primitive human beings? And the answer, they are the same spirits, come back to improve themselves with the aid of new bodies, but who are still very far from having reached perfection. Thus the present human race, which by its increase tends to invade the whole earth and to replace the races that are dying out, will have its periods of decrease and disappearance. It will be replaced by other and more perfect races that will descend from the present race, as the civilized men of the present day are descended from the rough-hewn savages of the primitive periods. Question 690. Regarded from a purely physical point of view, are the bodies of the present race of men a special creation, or have they proceeded from the bodies of the primitive races by reproduction? The answer, the origin of races is hidden in the night of time, but as they all belong to the great human family, whatever may have been the primitive root of each, they have been able to form alliances with one another, and thus to produce new types. Question 691. What, from a physical point of view, is the distinctive and dominant characteristic of primitive races? The answer, the development of brute force at the expense of intellectual power. The contrary takes place at the present day, for man now acts rather through his intelligence than through his bodily strength, and yet he accomplishes 100-fold more than he formerly did, because he has learned to avail himself of the forces of nature, which the animals cannot do. Question 692. Is the improvement of the vegetable and animal races, through the applications of science, contrary to the law of nature? Would it be more conformable without law to leave them to follow their normal course? And the answer, it is the duty of all beings to concur in every way in helping forward the general progress, and man himself is employed by God as an instrument for the accomplishment of his ends, perfection being the aim towards which everything in nature is tending. To help forward this process of improvement is to assist in working out the divine intentions. Follow-up question, but man, in his efforts to improve the races of the lower ranges, is generally moved by self-interest and has no other aim than the increase of his personal enjoyment. Does not this diminish the merit of his action? And the answer, what matters it that his merit should be null, provided the work of progress be accomplished? It is for him to render his labor meritorious by inspiring himself with a noble motive. Besides, in effecting these improvements, he develops his intelligence, and it is in this way that he derives the greatest benefit from his labor. Obstacles to reproduction. Question 693. Are the human laws and customs that have been established for the purpose of placing obstacles in the way of reproduction contrary to the laws of nature? And the answer, whatever hinders the operations of nature is contrary to the general law. Follow-up question, But there are many species of living beings, animals and vegetable, the unlimited reproduction of which would be hurtful to other species, and would soon be destructive of the human race. Is it wrong for man to arrest their reproduction? And the answer, God has given to man, all over the other living beings of his globe, a power which he ought to use for the general good, but not to abuse. He may regulate reproduction according to his needs, but he ought not to hinder it unnecessarily. The intelligent action of mankind is a counterpoise established by God for restoring the equilibrium of the forces of nature. And herein, again, man is distinguished from the animals, because he does this understandingly, while the animals, that also concur in maintaining this equilibrium, do so unconsciously, through the instinct of destruction which has been given to them, and which causes them, while providing for their own preservation only, to arrest the excessive development of the animal and vegetable species on which they feed, and which would otherwise become a source of danger. Question 694. What is to be thought of usages intended to arrest reproduction in the interest of sensuality? And the answer, they prove the predominance of the body over the soul, and show how deeply man has plunged himself into matter. Marriage and celibacy. Question 695. Is marriage, that is to say, the permanent union of two beings, contrary to the law of nature? And the answer, it is a progress arrived at by the human race. Question 696. What would be the effect upon human society of the abolition of marriage? And the answer, a return to the life of the beast. Kardec adds, the free and fortuitous union of the sexes is the state of nature. Marriage is one of the first results of progress in the constitution of human society, because it establishes fraternal solidarity being found among every people, through under different conditions. The abolition of marriage would therefore be a return to the infancy of the human race, and would place men even below certain animals that give him the example of constant unions. Question 697. Is the absolute indissolubility of marriage to be found in the law of nature, or is it only an ordination of human law? And the answer, it is a human law, although altogether contrary to the law of nature. But men may change their laws, those of nature are alone unchangeable. Question 698. Is voluntary celibacy meritorious in the sight of God? The answer, no. Those who live single from selfish motives are displeasing to God, for they fail to perform their share of social duties. Question 699. Is not celibacy on the part of some persons a sacrifice made by them for the sake of devoting themselves more entirely to the service of humanity? And the answer, that is a very different thing. I said from selfish motives. Every sort of personal sacrifice is meritorious when it is made for a good end, and the greater the sacrifice, the greater the merit. Kardec adds, God cannot contradict himself, nor regard as evil which he himself has made, and therefore he cannot regard the violation of his law as meritorious. But although celibacy in result is not meritorious, it may become much when the renunciation of family joys is a sacrifice accomplished in the interest of humanity. Every sacrifice of personal interest, when made for the good of others and without any reference to self, raises him who makes it above the level of his material condition. Polygamy. Question 700. Is polygamy or monogamy most in conformity with the law of nature? And the answer, polygamy is a human institution, the abolition of which marks an era of social progress. Marriage, according to the intention of God, should be founded on the affection of the beings who enter into it. In polygamy there is no real affection, there is only sensuality. Question 701. is the almost exact numerical equality existing between the sexes an indication of the proportions according to which they ought to be united? And the answer, yes, for every arrangement of nature has a specific purpose. Kardec adds, if polygamy were in accordance with the law of nature, it ought to be possible to establish it everywhere, but it would be physically impossible to do so, owing to the numerical equality of the sexes. Polygamy must therefore be regarded as a mere custom, adapted to the present state of certain peoples, and that will gradually disappear with the progress of their social improvement. For those interested in learning more about Spiritism, you can find the entire The Spirits book on PDF. Look up Allan Kardec /PDF on your favorite search engine. If you wish to explore more about the levels of heaven and the attributes of a spirit and the future of earth, I suggest you read my series of 3 books, starting with Heaven and Below, next Spirits and the Spirit Universe, and the 3rd book, How Spirits Guide Us. God bless.